The hidden allure of toxicity. It's often said that love makes us do crazy things. But what if love is the very thing that drives us toward destruction? There's a strange allure in toxic relationships, a magnetic pull that is difficult to resist, even when we know better. Have you ever wondered why, despite all the red flags, some people find themselves drawn to individuals who seem determined to break them down emotionally, mentally, and sometimes even physically? This paradox is at the core of toxic attraction, a phenomenon that seems to go against everything we know about healthy relationships. The more someone hurts us, the more we crave their attention, their affection, their approval. It's as if love, in its purest form, has somehow transformed into a weapon, one that cuts deep but keeps us coming back for more. The truth is, toxic love is not just about dysfunction. It's about a powerful emotional experience that, for some, feels addictive. It's the thrill of chaos, the intensity of passion that overshadows everything else, and the promise that maybe, just maybe, this time things will be different. The highs of a toxic relationship are intoxicating, and when paired with the emotional lows, they create a roller coaster of feelings that can feel just as compelling as any addiction. But why is it that so many people continue to fall into these destructive patterns, even when they know they are being mistreated? Why do we ignore the warning signs, the late-night texts that sting, the manipulation, the gaslighting, and the emotional abuse? This isn't just an issue of bad choices or poor judgment. There's something much deeper at play, something embedded within the way we connect with others, how we seek validation, and how we interpret love. Toxic relationships have a way of warping our perception of what love is supposed to be. They blur the lines between care and control, affection and manipulation, and pleasure and pain. When you're constantly on edge, wondering whether you're loved or hated, there's a strange comfort in the chaos. It's like stepping into a storm. You don't know when it will end, but there's something about the whirlwind that keeps you hooked. It's important to understand that toxic love isn't something that happens overnight. It builds gradually, often starting with subtle signs that are easy to ignore, small insults disguised as jokes, the occasional guilt trip, the overwhelming charm that later shifts into possessiveness. At first, it feels flattering to be the center of someone's world, to feel needed, desired, and wanted. But the dynamics change as the manipulation deepens. Soon, what once felt like love becomes a heavy burden that weighs on your mental health, sense of self-worth, and even your sanity. This is where things get complicated. The feeling of being chosen by someone with toxic tendencies can give you a sense of importance. It's almost as if you're special, the one they're willing to put in the effort for, even if that effort comes at a steep price. But over time, the relationship starts to feel less like a partnership and more like a prison. The very traits that seemed alluring, charm, passion, intensity, become the same ones that bind you. You're trapped in a cycle of needing to please them, wanting to prove yourself worthy of their affection, even when it feels impossible. Why do we find this so difficult to escape? Why do we stay? The truth is, toxic relationships are often deeply rooted in the psychology of attachment, need, and fear. As much as we wish to believe that love is something that should be nurturing and supportive, many of us carry unhealed wounds from past experiences. These wounds can be emotional scars from childhood, from previous relationships, or from societal expectations. In some ways, these wounds make us feel more connected to toxic individuals. They mirror parts of ourselves that we haven't fully acknowledged, and in doing so, they create a bond that feels hard to break. This is a deeply human experience, one that isn't just about bad partners or weak people. It's about how we, as individuals, are wired to seek love and connection. Love, in its purest form, should make us feel seen, heard, and valued. It should elevate us. But in toxic relationships, love often does the opposite. It makes us question ourselves, doubt our worth, and lose sight of the very things that make us unique. But no matter how much it hurts, the allure of toxic love can keep us coming back, time and time again. Love doesn't have to be toxic. True love should feel safe, supportive, and reciprocal. Yet, for many, breaking free from the grip of toxic love requires not just recognition, but the courage to heal, to understand why we've chosen unhealthy patterns, and to transform our understanding of what it means to love and be loved. So, how do we break free from the cycle? How do we learn to love ourselves first, and in turn, create space for healthier, more meaningful connections? Let's explore this journey together. What is toxic love? What does love really look like when it's toxic? We often hear the phrase, toxic love, thrown around in casual conversations, but its true nature is far more complex and insidious than simply arguing with your partner or having an occasional disagreement. Toxic love is an environment where the dynamics of power, control, and manipulation are woven into the very fabric of the relationship. It's not just about feeling bad. It's about feeling trapped, manipulated, and emotionally exhausted, even though the relationship itself can appear perfect from the outside. At the beginning, toxic relationships often seem perfect. It's like being swept off your feet. The partner's charm is overwhelming. Endless affection, constant attention, and promises of a bright future. This is where the danger lies. At first, it's intoxicating, like a drug that fills a void you didn't even know existed. But what starts as a romantic gesture soon turns into an emotionally draining cycle. The attention becomes possessiveness. The praise turns into criticism. The support slips into control. One of the most striking things about toxic love is how the emotional highs and lows blur the lines between affection and abuse. It's as though the more a person loves you, the more they hurt you. But the scars left behind are not physical. They are emotional, deeply rooted in self-doubt, insecurity, and fear. The constant cycle of push and pull, where love is followed by pain and confusion, creates a dependency. Instead of feeling supported, the victim begins to feel like they must earn affection through constant proving, and the relationship becomes a game of survival rather than love. Imagine a relationship where the highs are so high that you are willing to endure the lowest points, the fights, the emotional neglect, and the mind games just to experience those fleeting moments of warmth. This emotional roller coaster tricks you into believing that you need this chaos in order to feel loved. It's an addiction that feeds on vulnerability and uncertainty. The more toxic a person is, the more they want to control your emotions. And ironically, the more you fall for it. It feels like love, but it isn't. In the midst of all this manipulation, a toxic partner often hides behind a mask of love and concern. They may express their feelings in ways that appear genuine, with moments of tenderness that make it hard to let go. These moments, however brief, feel like salvation after the emotional battering you've endured. They create an emotional whiplash that leaves you questioning your reality. The constant inconsistency leaves you emotionally worn out and confused, caught between your desire for affection and the toxic behavior you know is there, buried under the surface. The manipulative tactics often used in toxic relationships include love bombing, gaslighting, and excessive criticism. Love bombing is where a partner floods you with affection and promises of love to secure your emotional investment. This affection is often overwhelming, to the point where it makes you feel special, wanted, and unique. But as soon as they've got you, the bomb drops. Suddenly, your every action is scrutinized, your thoughts questioned, and your self-worth challenged. This creates an emotional dependency where you begin to doubt yourself, wondering whether the criticism or the affection is the truth. Then comes gaslighting, a psychological manipulation tactic where the toxic partner makes you question your perception of reality. They may dismiss your feelings, tell you that you're overreacting, or even try to convince you that your memories are distorted. This makes you lose trust in your own judgment, further entangling you in their web. Over time, you start to doubt whether you're the problem. Your reality becomes warped, and the clarity you once had about what was wrong in the relationship disappears. In a healthy relationship, love should feel safe, nurturing, and equal. It should foster growth, trust, and mutual respect. But in toxic love, these elements are replaced by control, insecurity, and dependency. The imbalance of power is what makes these relationships so damaging. One partner controls the other by manipulating emotions, causing deep psychological harm that's often hidden from the public eye. The scars may not be visible, but they run deep, affecting how a person views themselves and others in the future. A toxic relationship doesn't always start with grand gestures of manipulation. It can begin with small, subtle behaviors that escalate over time. It may start with a partner who seems overly protective, a little jealous, or slightly critical of your choices. These behaviors often appear normal, even caring, but they set the stage for more toxic patterns to develop. It's easy to ignore the red flags at first because you convince yourself that love should be a little intense, that everyone experiences ups and downs in relationships. But when these behaviors grow unchecked, they form a foundation for manipulation, emotional abuse, and control. The most insidious aspect of toxic love is that it can be mistaken for passion. The intensity that comes with constant emotional turmoil often feels like the kind of love we see in movies and fairy tales. Unpredictable, all-consuming, and powerful. This intense bond, however, is not love at all. It is emotional turmoil disguised as affection, and it ultimately undermines one's emotional well-being. What begins as a whirlwind romance soon becomes an emotional battle where each victory feels hollow, and each defeat stings just a little bit more. While many people recognize the emotional scars left by toxic love, it's important to understand that the damage goes far beyond the immediate relationship. Those who have been in toxic relationships often carry the emotional weight into future interactions. Trust issues, insecurity, fear of intimacy, and anxiety become deeply ingrained, making it difficult to form healthy relationships later. The more we internalize the toxic behaviors, the harder it becomes to recognize what a healthy, loving relationship should feel like. Toxic love is not just about being with the wrong person. It's about how those toxic patterns affect your perception of love, self-worth, and relationships in general. Over time, it teaches you to accept less than you deserve and, worse yet, makes you believe that love should always come with pain. This cycle of dependency, manipulation, and emotional exhaustion creates an environment where the idea of love is warped, leaving you feeling broken, unsure of yourself, and afraid of the future. Childhood trauma and the roots of toxic attraction. Childhood is often the foundation for how we interact with the world around us, and this includes the relationships we form later in life. The way we were treated as children shapes our understanding of love, trust, and attachment. In many ways, the bonds we form with our parents or caregivers create templates for how we view future romantic relationships. When those early relationships are marked by neglect, inconsistency, or emotional abuse, the seeds of toxic attraction can be planted long before we even realize it. Imagine a child who grows up in a home where affection is inconsistent. One moment, they may feel loved and cherished. The next, they might be ignored or subjected to harsh criticism. This unpredictability teaches the child that love isn't constant. It's something to be earned or feared. Over time, this creates a sense of emotional insecurity. The child becomes uncertain of their place in the world, questioning their worth and the stability of relationships. Unfortunately, these emotional wounds don't magically heal when they grow up. Instead, they can continue to affect how they seek out love as an adult. As these children grow into adults, they may find themselves attracted to partners who exhibit similar emotional instability. The same emotional neglect or inconsistent affection they experienced as children may feel familiar and, oddly enough, comfortable. Toxic relationships, in a way, become a reflection of the very dynamics that were established in their formative years. Without consciously knowing it, they are seeking out partners who validate their early experiences, even if those experiences were painful or confusing. This is not to say that everyone who experiences childhood trauma ends up in a toxic relationship. But the emotional scars left by these early experiences often play a significant role in shaping the choices made in adult relationships. People with insecure attachment styles, often formed by inconsistent parenting or neglect, may find themselves more likely to gravitate toward relationships that mimic their childhood dynamics. They may seek out partners who are emotionally unavailable or abusive because, in their mind, that feels like love, unpredictable, hard to hold on to, but somehow familiar. The concept of attachment theory sheds light on this behavior. Attachment theory suggests that the bonds formed between a child and their caregiver influence how they interact with others throughout their life. Secure attachment leads to healthy relationships built on trust, comfort, and stability. On the other hand, children who experience inconsistent caregiving or emotional unavailability from their caregivers often develop insecure attachment styles. This can manifest as anxious attachment, constantly seeking validation and reassurance, or avoidant attachment, withdrawing from emotional intimacy and avoiding vulnerability. These attachment styles can shape how they approach relationships as adults, often making them more susceptible to toxic dynamics. Those who grow up in environments where emotional needs were neglected or unmet may feel like they have to fight for love. They may unconsciously believe that love must come with struggle, and they might feel unworthy of receiving affection without enduring hardship or emotional turmoil. This belief can lead them to seek out relationships where their emotional needs are not met, but they are constantly chasing after something they can never fully grasp. The highs of a toxic relationship, the moments of affection, the fleeting validation, become a lifeline, feeding into their deep-seated fear of abandonment and rejection. Additionally, growing up with emotionally unavailable or abusive caregivers can lead to difficulty recognizing healthy relationship dynamics. When affection and attention were hard to come by, it can feel like a person needs to chase or prove themselves in order to receive love. This often leads to a cycle where they unknowingly choose partners who are distant, controlling, or emotionally unavailable, because this is the version of love they've been conditioned to accept. In the absence of healthier models of affection, toxic relationships can feel like the only form of love they know how to navigate. This cycle is not easy to break. The emotional patterns formed during childhood become ingrained in how an individual sees themselves and their role in relationships. A person who has experienced childhood emotional neglect may not immediately recognize that they are worthy of love without strings attached, without the pain, or without the emotional manipulation that often accompanies toxic love. They may not understand that they deserve a partner who provides consistent affection, emotional support, and respect. Even when a person recognizes that their relationships are toxic, the process of healing requires confronting the trauma of the past. It requires a deep dive into the painful emotions and beliefs that were formed early on and acknowledging how these beliefs continue to affect their present-day choices. Overcoming these ingrained patterns often requires therapy, self-reflection, and the willingness to rewrite the stories they tell themselves about love and self-worth. It's not enough to simply leave a toxic relationship. They must also heal the emotional wounds that led them there in the first place. In many ways, recognizing and understanding the role of childhood trauma in shaping adult relationship patterns is the first step toward breaking free from toxic love. It allows individuals to see their past not as a life sentence, but as a factor that can be addressed and worked through. The journey toward healing involves not just leaving behind toxic relationships, but also learning how to break free from the emotional patterns that perpetuate them. Love addiction, craving the high of toxicity. Love addiction is often misunderstood as simply being overly attached or having a tendency to fall too hard. However, the truth of love addiction goes far deeper. It's an emotional craving, a desperate need to be emotionally fulfilled in a way that is unsustainable and unhealthy. It's not about the warmth of affection or genuine connection. It's about chasing an emotional high that comes from being attached to someone who offers fleeting attention or affection, but not the stability and consistency necessary for a healthy relationship. For someone suffering from love addiction, the relationship is not about nurturing a balanced and mutually supportive connection. It becomes about the need for validation. The addict seeks constant reassurance, not just to feel loved, but to feel worthy. This need manifests as a compulsive drive to be loved by a partner who may offer just enough affection to make the addict feel important, but only intermittently. The relationship becomes like a drug, where each dose of affection is never enough to satisfy the emotional cravings, leading to a never-ending pursuit for more. This type of addiction often starts innocuously enough. It can be a person who feels intense excitement when a partner shows even the smallest amount of affection. Their mind races with feelings of euphoria when their partner texts, compliments, or engages with them in ways that seem intimate or caring. These moments of attention fuel a craving for more, similar to how someone would chase after a drug's euphoric high. But the cycle becomes damaging when the attention starts to diminish. Instead of experiencing satisfaction from the affection received, the addict begins to feel an intense sense of emptiness when it isn't there. The addict becomes fixated on getting back to that high, believing that it is the only way to feel validated, important, or loved. What makes love addiction so unique is the paradox at its core. The addict may simultaneously feel intense emotional pain and intense joy, yet neither emotion feels sustainable or healthy. The partner's lack of consistency, emotional withdrawal, unpredictable affection, or even emotional abuse only deepens the addiction. The addict is caught in a cycle where moments of deep emotional connection are followed by periods of emotional neglect or confusion, but they continue to chase the brief moments of validation. The addictive nature of this cycle is compounded by the addict's belief that they are somehow special or different from others, that they can fix the relationship or partner. They feel as if they can make things work and will continue to chase the partner, trying harder, giving more, and sacrificing more of themselves, believing that this will eventually make the partner stay or love them in return. This need to prove worthiness only keeps the addict locked in a cycle of emotional dependency. Interestingly, love addiction often goes unrecognized because it disguises itself as a form of love, often viewed as an innocent desire for connection or romance. But when viewed through the lens of addiction, it becomes clear that these desires are not about building something healthy, but about feeding an emotional void. Love addicts may also ignore red flags or rationalize unhealthy behavior in their partner, convincing themselves that the toxicity is just part of the passion of love. Their fixation on the highs of the relationship and their need to chase the next dose of affection makes it difficult to recognize that the emotional turmoil is not a sign of love, it's a symptom of addiction. The desire for validation becomes so overpowering that the addict may be willing to endure emotionally destructive behaviors to continue feeling wanted or desired. This might mean ignoring or accepting abusive behaviors such as manipulation, lies, or inconsistency. They may even defend these behaviors to themselves and others, thinking that if they just hold on long enough, things will improve. But over time, the emotional toll of this kind of love addiction is devastating. The addict often ends up feeling worse about themselves, doubting their worth and feeling broken after every emotional letdown. The intense emotional highs no longer feel fulfilling because the addict has become so desensitized to them, always yearning for more. Healing from love addiction requires breaking the emotional cycle that keeps the person attached to the toxic relationship. The first step is recognizing that the pursuit of affection, attention, and validation from a toxic partner is not healthy. It's a form of emotional dependency that needs to be addressed. Therapy and support groups can provide a space for individuals to understand the root causes of their addiction and learn healthier ways to manage their emotional needs. Rebuilding self-esteem and learning to validate oneself internally, rather than relying on others for constant reassurance, is key to breaking free from the addictive cycle. Moreover, healing involves learning to separate love from the addiction to emotional highs. It requires the individual to understand that true love does not depend on inconsistent attention or emotional manipulation. It is about building a relationship based on mutual respect, trust, and consistent affection. Learning how to develop emotional independence is a crucial part of the recovery process. Over time, a love addict can learn to recognize the difference between real, healthy love and the toxic, addictive cycle they were once trapped in. The fear of loneliness, a silent driver of toxic attraction. Loneliness is a powerful force. It can creep up slowly, like a shadow at the edge of your mind, or it can hit like a wave, overwhelming and suffocating. In today's world, where social connections are often measured by the number of followers on an app or the frequency of interactions, the fear of being alone can feel more intense than ever. This fear isn't just about physical solitude. It's about emotional isolation, the deep, gut-wrenching sense that you are not truly connected to anyone, that you are invisible, that no one truly sees or understands you. For many, this fear of being alone becomes so unbearable that they are willing to tolerate unhealthy or even abusive relationships just to avoid it. This is where toxic relationships thrive. A toxic partner often plays on this fear, knowing that their victim will go to great lengths to avoid the pain of loneliness. It's not uncommon for someone to stay in a relationship, even when they know it's damaging, simply because they fear the emotional void that comes with being single. The thought of being alone, without anyone to love or share their life with, becomes so paralyzing that it feels easier to stay in a toxic situation, where at least some emotional interaction is guaranteed, even if it's painful. The problem with this mindset is that the fear of loneliness creates a false sense of connection. In a toxic relationship, the emotional ups and downs are often mistaken for real love and intimacy. The intense emotional engagement, even if it's negative, feels better than the emptiness of being alone. People trapped in this cycle may find themselves rationalizing their partner's behavior, excusing the emotional neglect, manipulation, or even outright abuse. After all, they reason, it's better to be in a toxic relationship than to face the void of loneliness. This sense of emotional emptiness is not just a temporary feeling. It becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. The more someone stays in a toxic relationship out of fear of being alone, the more they lose touch with their own needs and desires. The relationship becomes a mirror of their own fears, reinforcing the idea that they aren't good enough to be loved in a healthy way. They begin to internalize the idea that they deserve the pain, the neglect, and the dysfunction because, deep down, they believe that being in any relationship, even a toxic one, is better than being alone. The thought of rejection, of being alone without anyone to care for them, feels like an existential crisis. This attachment to the idea of companionship can be traced back to early experiences of connection and attachment. For many, the fear of loneliness is rooted in childhood experiences of neglect or emotional abandonment. If a child grows up feeling disconnected from their caregivers or is subjected to inconsistent love and attention, they may carry this sense of emotional insecurity into adulthood. They may feel that they must cling to any form of affection or connection, even if it comes at the expense of their emotional well-being. Over time, this fear of abandonment, triggered by the idea of being alone, grows into a persistent anxiety that influences their romantic choices. In adult relationships, this fear of loneliness can be triggered by the smallest moments of emotional distance or rejection. The absence of affection from a partner may be perceived as the precursor to being completely alone, leading the individual to stay in unhealthy relationships longer than they should. Instead of confronting the discomfort of solitude, they stay in toxic partnerships that offer just enough emotional interaction to keep the fear of loneliness at bay. The irony is that staying in these toxic relationships actually makes the fear of loneliness worse. The longer a person stays in a relationship where they are emotionally drained or neglected, the more isolated they may become. The partner who manipulates or emotionally abandons them will often make them feel unworthy of love, reinforcing their belief that they are not good enough for healthy affection. Over time, this emotional neglect can feel more isolating than being single. The loneliness in a toxic relationship is not just the absence of a partner. It's the absence of respect, care, and emotional fulfillment. It's the kind of loneliness that seeps into the very core of your being, leaving you feeling small and invisible. Breaking free from this cycle requires an understanding that loneliness, while uncomfortable, is not a death sentence. In fact, it can be a powerful catalyst for personal growth. When someone feels the sting of loneliness, they are often forced to confront themselves in ways they would never do in a relationship. They can begin to reconnect with their own needs, desires, and sense of self-worth. This process is painful, but it's also necessary for healing. When we learn to be comfortable with our own company, to enjoy solitude, and to fill our own emotional well from within, we no longer feel the need to settle for toxic relationships. Healing involves developing a healthy relationship with oneself, learning to be content with one's own company, and building emotional resilience. Therapy, journaling, and self-reflection can be key tools in learning to embrace solitude without the fear of being alone forever. Reaching out to supportive friends and family members, joining new communities, and engaging in activities that nurture personal growth can also help diminish the fear of being alone. Over time, solitude becomes less about emptiness and more about self-empowerment. People who fear loneliness often hold the misconception that being with anyone, no matter how toxic, is better than being single. In reality, the right kind of relationship, one that is nurturing, loving, and based on mutual respect, only becomes possible once a person is comfortable in their own skin and no longer feels emotionally desperate. True emotional fulfillment comes not from filling the void with a partner, but from filling the void within oneself. It's only then that they can attract a partner who genuinely enhances their life rather than reinforcing their deepest fears. Narcissism and the toxic love trap. Narcissism is often romanticized in popular culture as a form of self-confidence or assertiveness. The word itself has taken on a certain allure associated with charisma and charm. But the reality of narcissism, especially in relationships, is far darker and far more insidious. Narcissists often present themselves as the perfect partner at first, showering you with affection and adoration. This is called love bombing. The attention is overwhelming, the compliments endless, and the promises of a blissful future intoxicating. In the beginning, it feels like a dream. But this dream slowly turns into a nightmare as the narcissist's true nature emerges. The emotional manipulation that takes place in a relationship with a narcissist can be hard to recognize at first. It's subtle, often masked by what seems like love. But it quickly becomes clear that the narcissist's affection isn't based on genuine care. Instead, it's a tool for control. Narcissists thrive on admiration and validation. They demand constant attention, but their love is transactional, not unconditional. If you fail to provide the praise or validation they seek, you quickly become a target of their wrath. They may begin to criticize you, belittle you, or make you feel insignificant, all in an effort to regain the control they crave. One of the most dangerous aspects of narcissistic relationships is gaslighting, a form of psychological manipulation that makes you question your own reality. The narcissist may deny things they said or did, shifting the blame onto you for any issues in the relationship. Over time, this constant invalidation of your thoughts and feelings can cause you to lose confidence in your own perception. You may begin to feel like you're the problem, unsure of your own judgment, and questioning whether your emotional reactions are justified. This leaves you feeling trapped, as the narcissist steadily erodes your self-esteem and makes you doubt your worth. Narcissists often use emotional withdrawal as a way to maintain control. They know how to push your buttons, make you feel loved and desired, and then withhold affection when you need it most. This intermittent affection is like a drug. It pulls you in, makes you feel special, and keeps you hooked. The emotional highs of being praised and adored are followed by the crushing lows of rejection or coldness. The narcissist knows that these fluctuations will keep you chasing their approval, making you more and more dependent on their validation. This dependency creates a cycle that is incredibly difficult to break. You start to believe that the narcissist's love is the only love that matters, and that without them, you're nothing. You begin to accept their behaviors, even though they're damaging, because the thought of losing their love feels like the end of the world. The fear of abandonment, of losing the approval and admiration of the narcissist, keeps you stuck in a relationship that is inherently unhealthy. You might even begin to rationalize their behavior, telling yourself that they don't mean to hurt you, that they are just going through a rough time, or that you're the one who needs to change. The narcissist also uses triangulation as a tactic to keep their power. They may involve a third party, another person, an ex, or even a family member, to create jealousy and insecurity. The aim is to make you feel threatened, to keep you on edge, and to make you compete for their attention and affection. This tactic is incredibly effective at destabilizing your sense of security within the relationship. It makes you feel like you're constantly being watched, judged, and compared to others, which further fuels the emotional chaos and confusion. In a narcissistic relationship, your feelings are never prioritized. The narcissist may make it seem like they care about you, but in reality, they care about themselves and their own needs. Your emotions are secondary to their need for admiration and attention. If you try to express your feelings or needs, they may dismiss them, downplay them, or make you feel selfish for wanting something in return. Over time, you begin to suppress your own needs, thinking that it's easier to just give them what they want to avoid conflict or emotional distance. This constant emotional manipulation wears you down, leaving you feeling drained and disconnected from your true self. You begin to lose sight of your own identity as you become entangled in the narcissist's world. You may even feel like you're walking on eggshells, constantly worried about triggering their anger or displeasure. You second-guess every action and word, trying to maintain peace in a relationship that thrives on chaos and emotional imbalance. The most painful aspect of being in a relationship with a narcissist is the loss of self. Over time, your sense of identity is replaced by a need to constantly seek their approval. You may start to change your behavior, your appearance, or even your values to meet their expectations. The person you were before the relationship, the confident, independent, self-assured individual, is slowly chipped away until you're left with a shell of who you used to be. The narcissist's love becomes a tool for control, not a source of comfort or support. Breaking free from a narcissistic relationship is incredibly difficult because the emotional bond is so strong. But it's important to recognize that the love you were seeking was never truly love at all. It was manipulation, it was control, and it was a distorted version of affection designed to keep you hooked and dependent. The process of healing from a narcissistic relationship involves reclaiming your sense of self and recognizing that you deserve a love that is supportive, mutual, and kind. You must learn to trust your own instincts again, to honor your own feelings, and to realize that true love doesn't come with strings attached or emotional abuse. The biochemical high. Why toxic love feels addictive. The way we feel when we're in love, especially when it's toxic love, has less to do with the love itself and more with what's happening inside our brains. The addictive pull of toxic love is not a random phenomenon. It's deeply rooted in our brain chemistry. Love, in its most euphoric form, activates the reward system in the brain. But when it comes to toxic love, that same system is hijacked, causing emotional highs that are as addictive as any substance. When you first fall in love, your brain releases a cocktail of chemicals: dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin. These chemicals flood the brain, creating feelings of happiness, pleasure, and attachment. This is a natural, healthy response to love, designed to bond two people together. But in a toxic relationship, these same chemicals are at work in an even more powerful, destabilizing way. The inconsistency of affection, The emotional ups and downs and the psychological games in toxic love make the release of these chemicals more intense and more addictive. At the heart of this cycle is dopamine, the brain's primary feel-good chemical. Dopamine is associated with reward, pleasure, and motivation. When you receive attention or validation from a partner, your brain releases dopamine, making you feel good and reinforcing the behavior that triggered it. In a healthy relationship, dopamine helps you feel connected, motivated, and joyful. However, in a toxic relationship, the dopamine rush doesn't come consistently. It comes in sporadic bursts. The highs of affection and praise are followed by emotional withdrawal, criticism, or even gaslighting. This inconsistency makes the dopamine rush feel more rewarding and more desirable, even though the relationship itself is unhealthy. This inconsistency in affection, when your partner is warm and loving one moment, distant or cruel the next, tricks your brain into craving more. It's a form of emotional unpredictability that makes the brain's reward system more sensitive. You begin to crave the next hit of love, even when you know that the affection isn't genuine or that it comes at the cost of your emotional well-being. It's similar to the brain chemistry behind gambling addiction, where the occasional win triggers a rush that makes you chase after it repeatedly, even if the odds are stacked against you. The more you try to please your partner and gain their approval, the more your brain becomes conditioned to associate their affection with pleasure, even if it's fleeting and toxic. Alongside dopamine, oxytocin, known as the love hormone, plays a key role in toxic love addiction. Oxytocin is released when we feel emotionally close to someone, helping to bond us to that person. In healthy relationships, oxytocin fosters emotional closeness and trust. But in toxic relationships, the release of oxytocin is paired with negative experiences. The love-bombing moments of affection can create an oxytocin rush, making you feel deeply connected and emotionally bonded to your partner. But the contrast between affection and emotional withdrawal strengthens the bond, creating a psychological trap. You may feel a deep attachment to the toxic person because your brain links them to both pleasure and emotional closeness, making it incredibly difficult to break free. Furthermore, serotonin, a neurotransmitter that regulates mood, appetite, and sleep, also plays a role in the emotional roller coaster of toxic love. When serotonin levels are unbalanced, as they often are in emotionally turbulent relationships, a person may experience mood swings, anxiety, and depression. In the context of a toxic relationship, serotonin levels can fluctuate wildly. One minute, you feel elated by your partner's affection. The next, you feel empty, confused, or anxious after their emotional withdrawal. This fluctuation in serotonin levels contributes to the mood instability that makes toxic love so addictive and hard to leave. The brain becomes addicted to these emotional extremes, craving both the highs and the emotional lows, which mimic the patterns of an addiction. These biochemical processes explain why toxic relationships feel so compelling and difficult to escape. The brain, caught in this cycle of emotional highs and lows, teaches the body to crave the unpredictable nature of the relationship. The person in a toxic relationship may begin to feel like they are unable to experience real happiness without the dramatic emotional highs that come with it. They become conditioned to expect and even seek out the chaos because it has been chemically embedded into their reward system. While these biochemical responses are normal, they are hijacked in toxic relationships. Instead of love fostering connection, safety, and mutual respect, it is used to create dependence. The brain becomes wired to seek out that next hit of dopamine and oxytocin, even if it means enduring emotional pain and turmoil. The person in the toxic relationship becomes emotionally addicted to their partner, unable to break the cycle, even when they are fully aware that the relationship is damaging. The real difficulty comes when the relationship starts to fade, or when the emotional manipulation becomes so toxic that it outweighs any positive feelings. The brain has become so attuned to the chemical highs of love, those brief moments of connection, that it starts to crave them even more. The constant push and pull between affection and neglect creates a craving for the highs that no longer seem to come without the lows. Breaking free from the addictive cycle of toxic love requires a conscious effort to recalibrate the brain's reward system. The first step is recognizing the chemical forces at play and understanding how they've influenced emotional dependency. Rebuilding emotional resilience requires learning to find fulfillment and joy outside of the toxic relationship. This might mean learning new coping strategies, engaging in activities that promote healthy emotional bonds, and finding validation from within rather than relying on another person. Healing from the biochemical addiction of toxic love takes time and effort, but the reward is a deeper, more meaningful connection to oneself and to healthier, more supportive relationships. Societal influence. How society fuels toxic relationships. Society plays an undeniable role in shaping our perceptions of relationships and love. From the time we are young, we are exposed to romantic ideals, whether through media, family, or peer groups, that influence how we view ourselves and others in the context of love. These societal norms and ideals can often serve as a double-edged sword, promoting the idea of love and companionship as the ultimate form of happiness, while simultaneously reinforcing unhealthy expectations that feed into toxic relationship dynamics. In many ways, society glorifies the concept of soulmates, presenting the idea that love is something that should come effortlessly and that the right partner will complete us. This romanticized view of love is prevalent in movies, TV shows, and books, where toxic behaviors are often portrayed as signs of deep passion and commitment. Think of the classic portrayal of the bad boy who is misunderstood, yet ultimately wins the heart of the protagonist. The relationship, despite being riddled with emotional manipulation or even abusive tendencies, is often presented as a love story worth aspiring to. This skewed portrayal makes toxic behaviors seem acceptable, even desirable, in the name of love. The idea that love conquers all can also be problematic. Society tends to promote the belief that if you truly love someone, you should be willing to overlook their flaws, tolerate their mistakes, and endure hardships together. While sacrifice is often a part of any healthy relationship, this narrative can lead people to ignore harmful patterns or abusive behaviors in the belief that they can fix their partner or that the relationship will improve with time. The pressure to stay in a relationship, even when it is toxic, can be overwhelming, especially when society reinforces the notion that love should be all-consuming, with partners needing to fight for each other. Additionally, there is a strong societal stigma surrounding being single. In many cultures, being in a relationship is seen as the default and the desirable state. Single individuals, particularly those who are older or have been divorced, can be subjected to judgment, whether it's through unsolicited advice or the perception that they are somehow incomplete without a partner. This creates an unhealthy pressure to settle into any relationship, even if it's dysfunctional, simply to avoid societal stigma. The constant questioning of why someone is still single or the assumption that being alone equates to failure reinforces the idea that having a partner, any partner, is better than being alone, even if the relationship is toxic. Moreover, societal views on gender and love often perpetuate toxic dynamics. In many cultures, there are deeply ingrained beliefs about what men and women should do in relationships. Expectations that can normalize emotional manipulation and control. For example, women may be taught to prioritize their partner's needs over their own, while men may be taught to view emotional vulnerability as weakness, leading them to avoid emotional intimacy and control their partners in unhealthy ways. These gendered expectations often create imbalances in power and promote toxic behaviors that are seen as acceptable, even though they contribute to emotional and psychological harm. In some cases, societal norms around love and relationships are also tied to a broader consumerist mentality that treats relationships as a commodity. We are constantly told that we should find the one, settle down, and even upgrade our relationships as though they are just another product to obtain or improve. Dating apps and the rise of hookup culture have turned love into a marketplace where we are encouraged to find partners based on external factors such as attractiveness or social status, rather than emotional compatibility or mutual respect. This commodification of relationships can often lead people to overlook red flags in favor of the ideal partner, who may fit superficial criteria but fail to meet the deeper emotional and psychological needs that make for a healthy, loving relationship. The media and social platforms further exacerbate these ideals, presenting highly curated versions of love and relationships that are often far from reality. Social media influencers, celebrities, and even friends on Facebook or Instagram showcase only the perfect moments, beautiful dinners, romantic vacations, and happy couples. This creates a distorted reality where relationships are judged by their outward appearance rather than their actual emotional depth or stability. For someone in a toxic relationship, this constant exposure to perfect love stories can lead to feelings of inadequacy or self-doubt, making them feel like their own relationship should match up to these ideals, even if it's emotionally destructive. This societal pressure to conform to romantic ideals not only harms individuals in toxic relationships, but also diminishes their sense of self-worth. They may feel like they are falling short of the ideal love story, struggling in silence, and questioning whether they are the problem. It's crucial to challenge these societal pressures and shift the narrative toward healthier, more realistic views of love and relationships. Love isn't about perfection, and a successful relationship isn't about matching up to societal standards. It's about mutual respect, support, and the emotional well-being of both partners. To heal from toxic relationships, we must first free ourselves from these societal expectations that encourage us to stay in unhealthy dynamics. Breaking free from societal norms means redefining what love truly is, based on our personal experiences and values, rather than on the projections of others. It's about embracing the idea that being single or walking away from a toxic relationship does not equate to failure, but rather to the courage to prioritize one's emotional health and well-being. Love, in its purest form, should nurture and uplift, not cause pain or confusion. By rejecting societal pressure, we can create space for healthier relationships that foster trust, respect, and true connection, allowing love to be an enriching part of life rather than a burden. The role of social media in toxic relationships. Social media has become an inseparable part of modern relationships, often acting as both a bridge and a barrier in how we connect with others. In the context of toxic relationships, social media plays a significant role in exacerbating unhealthy dynamics, creating emotional tension, and further entangling individuals in dysfunctional behaviors. What might seem like a simple tool for communication quickly becomes a battleground where jealousy, insecurity, and manipulation are amplified. One of the most common ways social media fuels toxic relationships is by giving the toxic partner a platform for emotional control. The public nature of social media makes it easy for a partner to exert power over the other, whether by oversharing private information or controlling online behaviors. A narcissistic partner, for example, may constantly post about their affection for you, or, conversely, may use passive-aggressive posts to make you feel insecure or guilty. The need to monitor the partner's every move online becomes a central theme, where checking up on social media becomes a compulsive habit rather than a healthy interaction. Over time, this creates emotional volatility, where the addictiveness of digital validation overshadows the actual quality of the relationship. The constant exposure to curated lives on social media can also intensify feelings of inadequacy or jealousy in a toxic relationship. The beauty of social media is that it allows individuals to present a highly edited, filtered version of their lives. What others post, happy moments, family vacations, perfect pictures, becomes the standard by which we measure our own lives. When trapped in a toxic relationship, a person might compare their partner's attention, affection, and engagement to what they see in others' posts. This leads to unhealthy jealousy and constant monitoring of the partner's online activity, especially if the toxic partner is emotionally distant or manipulative. The cycle of comparison feeds into self-doubt and fuels an internal narrative that something is wrong with the relationship, even if the reality is that social media often paints an incomplete, unrealistic picture. The need for validation on social media is another way toxic relationships thrive. In relationships where one partner thrives on external validation, social media becomes a platform for reinforcement. Constant likes, comments, and attention from others can validate feelings of importance and desirability, while any lack of engagement or attention from a partner can trigger insecurity or frustration. In toxic dynamics, this validation-seeking behavior often spills over into the relationship, where the need for constant approval and attention becomes an emotional crutch. Social media gives the partner a way to publicly perform affection, while hiding the emotional neglect or manipulation occurring in private. Moreover, social media often distorts the concept of love and affection. Many people post idealized versions of their relationships, posing together on vacation, celebrating anniversaries, or sharing intimate moments that seem to reflect an ideal love. However, these posts can be misleading, as they only show the surface level of what is happening. For someone in a toxic relationship, this can create a sense of disconnection or resentment. They might feel that their own relationship is somehow flawed or inferior because it doesn't measure up to the perfection they see online. This can push individuals to seek unhealthy forms of attention or validation, further entangling them in the toxic dynamics they're trying to escape. A less obvious, but equally dangerous, impact of social media on toxic relationships is the false sense of connection it creates. While social media allows people to feel more connected than ever, it also gives the illusion of closeness without the deeper emotional intimacy needed for a healthy relationship. Partners in toxic relationships might rely on constant messaging, liking posts, or commenting as substitutes for meaningful, face-to-face conversations. This type of virtual affection doesn't provide the emotional depth or understanding required for a sustainable relationship. In the long run, the couple's connection becomes superficial, based more on public displays than authentic emotional support. Lastly, social media creates an echo chamber for toxic behavior. It's easy to surround oneself with people who reinforce unhealthy relationship norms. When toxic behavior is normalized in one's social circle, whether through memes, relationship advice, or shared experiences, it can feel validating to continue the toxic cycle. Sometimes, toxic individuals or groups will encourage jealousy, possessiveness, or emotional manipulation, either knowingly or unknowingly, and these behaviors become normalized or even admired within the group. This echo chamber keeps toxic patterns alive, making it harder for individuals to break free and seek healthier alternatives. While social media itself is not inherently toxic, it can become a tool for fueling unhealthy dynamics when it is used to manipulate, control, or validate unhealthy relationship patterns. The key to breaking free is learning to limit social media's influence on one's perception of self-worth and love. This means setting boundaries on how much time is spent online, choosing to engage in platforms that promote positive mental health, and being cautious about comparing your relationship to others. Learning to navigate social media in a healthier way involves recognizing the disconnect between online appearances and real-world dynamics. A perfect relationship posted online might hide deep emotional issues that are not visible to the public eye. By embracing this awareness, individuals can focus on building genuine, offline relationships that are based on respect, trust, and mutual care, without relying on social media validation or perfection. The mental health impact of toxic relationships. Toxic relationships take a profound toll on mental health, often leaving invisible scars that can affect a person's emotional and psychological well-being for years. The damage caused by emotional manipulation, control, and neglect can be just as severe as physical abuse. yet it often goes unrecognized. One of the most insidious aspects of a toxic relationship is the gradual erosion of self-esteem, self-worth, and trust in one's own judgment. At the heart of the mental health impact is the constant emotional instability that a toxic relationship creates. The emotional highs and lows can be draining, leaving an individual in a perpetual state of anxiety. One moment, you may feel adored, wanted, and loved, and the next, you are abandoned or emotionally neglected. This unpredictability takes a toll on your mental health, as your brain becomes conditioned to expect emotional chaos. The constant stress of never knowing what to expect from your partner, whether they will be affectionate or cruel, can result in anxiety, feelings of helplessness, and a loss of control over your emotions. The gaslighting that often occurs in toxic relationships is another significant factor that affects mental health. A narcissistic or manipulative partner may make you question your perceptions of reality. They might deny their own behavior, blame you for their actions, or even accuse you of being overly sensitive. This can leave you feeling confused and disoriented, unsure of your own feelings or what is real. Over time, this self-doubt grows, leading to a complete breakdown in self-confidence. People in toxic relationships often lose their ability to trust themselves, which is a devastating blow to mental health. The damage done by gaslighting is psychological, making it difficult for victims to regain a sense of emotional clarity. This self-doubt is compounded by the emotional neglect that is so common in toxic relationships. The partner may be emotionally distant or unavailable, leaving you to question your worth and feel unimportant. Over time, you may start to internalize this neglect, believing that you don't deserve to be treated with respect or care. This leads to feelings of worthlessness and rejection, which are major contributors to depression and anxiety. You might find yourself constantly trying to win your partner's approval, but no matter what you do, it's never enough. This unrelenting cycle of trying to please someone who is emotionally unavailable or dismissive leaves you feeling isolated and invisible. As your mental health deteriorates, so does your ability to form healthy connections with others. The emotional wounds inflicted by toxic relationships can create lasting barriers that make it difficult to trust or engage fully with new people. Victims of toxic relationships often develop attachment issues, such as anxiety or avoidance, which hinder their ability to form secure and fulfilling relationships in the future. The fear of being hurt again, or of repeating the same toxic dynamics, becomes ingrained in the mind, making it harder to trust anyone, even in future romantic relationships or friendships. The stress of being in a toxic relationship can also manifest in physical symptoms. Chronic anxiety, depression, and emotional exhaustion can take a toll on the body, leading to sleep disturbances, headaches, digestive issues, and chronic fatigue. The emotional turmoil that toxic relationships create often affects every aspect of a person's life, leaving them physically drained and mentally foggy. The body reacts to emotional pain just as it would to physical stress, causing long-term health problems if the emotional trauma is not addressed. Beyond anxiety and depression, toxic relationships can also foster feelings of guilt and shame. Victims may feel guilty for staying in the relationship, even though they know it's damaging. They might wonder if they could have done more to change their partner's behavior or fix the relationship. This guilt is often exacerbated by the manipulative tactics of the toxic partner, who may blame their victim for the problems in the relationship, further isolating them and creating an environment where they feel responsible for the abuse they are enduring. This sense of guilt leads to a cycle of self-blame and self-punishment, making it harder to break free from the relationship. Over time, the mental health effects of being in a toxic relationship can lead to long-term emotional scars. Many individuals find it difficult to regain their sense of identity after a toxic relationship because they've spent so long trying to meet their partner's demands or fix the relationship. The longer a person stays in a toxic relationship, the more they lose touch with who they are outside of that relationship. They may feel disconnected from their friends, family, and even their own desires and goals. This identity loss makes it even harder to break free from the relationship, as the individual begins to associate their self-worth with their partner's approval or acceptance. The first step toward recovery is recognizing the impact of the relationship on your mental health. This involves understanding that the emotional and psychological toll you've experienced is real and that you deserve to heal. Therapy can be a powerful tool in this process, helping individuals rebuild their self-esteem, challenge the negative beliefs created by the toxic relationship, and develop healthier coping mechanisms. It's important to address the emotional damage that has been done, as healing is a process that requires both mental and emotional work. In addition to therapy, self-care practices such as mindfulness, journaling, and exercise can help restore emotional balance and foster a sense of empowerment. Building a strong support system is also crucial. Surrounding yourself with people who understand your experience and can offer love and validation helps you rebuild your confidence and sense of self. Over time, with patience and support, it's possible to heal from the mental health effects of a toxic relationship and regain a sense of control over your life. Unresolved conflicts, the silent killer of relationships. Unresolved conflicts are like a slow poison in relationships. They often start small, with simple disagreements or misunderstandings, but when left unaddressed, they can fester and grow into something much more damaging. The emotional strain caused by these conflicts erodes trust, communication, and intimacy over time. In toxic relationships, unresolved conflicts are particularly destructive, as they are rarely addressed in a healthy way. Instead of finding resolution, partners may avoid, suppress, or escalate the issues, leading to a cycle of ongoing emotional turmoil. In the early stages of a relationship, conflicts may seem insignificant or even easy to overlook. Perhaps you brush them off with the hope that they'll resolve themselves, or you avoid confrontation because you don't want to disrupt the harmony. However, this approach to conflict resolution rarely works. Over time, the unresolved issues accumulate, creating emotional distance between partners. What was once a small disagreement turns into an unresolved, lingering issue that has not only gone unaddressed, but is now overshadowing the entire relationship. The consequences of unresolved conflicts are profound. First, they lead to a breakdown in communication. When conflicts remain unresolved, communication becomes more guarded, and both partners may stop sharing their true feelings. The emotional walls that begin to form create a sense of isolation, where both individuals feel disconnected and misunderstood. Instead of seeking understanding and compromise, the conversation shifts to defending positions or trying to avoid the issue altogether. As communication weakens, the emotional bond between partners starts to deteriorate. In addition to communication problems, unresolved conflicts also breed resentment. When issues are left unaddressed, they don't simply disappear. They accumulate, and with every unspoken grievance, resentment builds. Over time, this resentment becomes a silent killer in the relationship. Each partner starts to carry emotional baggage, making it harder to move forward or to rebuild the trust that has been broken. The unspoken resentments can lead to passive-aggressive behavior, where one partner acts out their frustrations in indirect or subtle ways. This passive aggression can create a toxic environment where the true issues are never addressed, but the emotional strain continues to grow. Another danger of unresolved conflicts is that they can lead to emotional withdrawal. As the issues pile up, one or both partners may begin to emotionally shut down as a defense mechanism. This withdrawal may look like avoiding conversations, becoming less affectionate, or withdrawing from shared activities. The emotional distance becomes a shield to protect oneself from further hurt, but it also makes the relationship more disconnected. This withdrawal can cause both partners to feel lonely and alienated, even when they are physically together. In toxic relationships, unresolved conflicts often take the form of escalating arguments. Instead of having calm, constructive discussions, disagreements quickly escalate into heated arguments filled with shouting, name-calling, or blaming. These arguments rarely lead to a productive resolution and often leave both partners feeling angry and unheard. Over time, these unresolved, escalating conflicts erode the sense of safety and trust in the relationship. Every argument feels like a battle to be won rather than an opportunity to understand one another's perspective. The most harmful aspect of unresolved conflicts is that they keep the relationship in a constant state of emotional tension. Even when there isn't a direct argument happening, the unspoken issues simmer beneath the surface, creating an undercurrent of tension. This tension prevents both partners from truly relaxing or feeling secure in the relationship. Instead of focusing on building a strong emotional connection, both individuals are preoccupied with the underlying issues that have not been resolved. This constant stress takes a toll on mental and emotional well-being, leaving both partners feeling drained and overwhelmed. In a healthy relationship, conflicts are an opportunity for growth and understanding. When conflicts arise, they should be addressed openly and honestly, with a focus on resolution and mutual understanding. Both partners should feel safe enough to express their feelings without fear of retribution or emotional abuse. However, in a toxic relationship, conflict is often used as a tool for control, manipulation, or emotional punishment. Instead of resolving the issue, one or both partners may use the conflict as an opportunity to undermine the other person's self-esteem, assert power, or avoid taking responsibility for their own actions. Conflict resolution is an essential skill in any relationship. It's about finding a healthy way to address issues, to communicate openly and respectfully, and to work together toward a solution. However, when conflict resolution is absent, or when one partner refuses to engage in healthy communication, the relationship becomes more fragile. The longer issues go unresolved, the harder it becomes to repair the emotional damage that has been done. The relationship starts to feel like a never-ending battle rather than a partnership based on mutual respect and understanding. To break the cycle of unresolved conflicts, both partners need to be willing to take responsibility for their actions and their role in the relationship. This means acknowledging when things have gone wrong, apologizing sincerely, and making an effort to prevent the same issues from arising in the future. It requires patience, self-awareness, and a commitment to improving the relationship. It's also essential to recognize that resolution doesn't mean winning the argument. It means finding a solution that works for both people and rebuilding trust and connection. Overcoming toxic love, the road to emotional freedom. Overcoming toxic love and reclaiming emotional freedom can feel like a daunting task, especially when you're emotionally entangled with a partner who thrives on manipulation and control. However, breaking free from this cycle of toxic affection is not only possible, it's a journey toward empowerment, personal growth, and emotional healing. It starts by recognizing that you deserve better than what you've experienced, and that love should be an experience that nurtures your mental health, rather than depleting it. One of the first steps in overcoming toxic love is redefining your emotional relationship with love. In a toxic relationship, love is often conditional, given only when you meet certain expectations or when the partner is emotionally satisfied. The core of overcoming toxic love lies in recognizing that true love is unconditional, supportive, and liberating. It's about understanding that love should not cause pain, confusion, or self-doubt. Reframing love as something that uplifts and empowers, rather than drains and isolates, will shift the way you view future relationships and your worth within them. As part of this process, it's essential to embrace emotional independence. Toxic relationships thrive on dependency. One partner needs to feel needed or indispensable, while the other is left trying to please and placate. The freedom from toxic love comes when you rediscover yourself outside the relationship. This is the time to reclaim your sense of individuality, your goals, and your passions. It's about reinvesting in the things that bring you joy and fulfillment, apart from the toxicity that has defined your past relationship. Emotional independence doesn't mean isolating yourself. It means creating space in your life for activities, hobbies, and relationships that foster a sense of freedom and growth. Another critical part of healing is learning to trust your instincts. Toxic relationships often cloud your judgment, making you second-guess your emotions or perceptions. The cycle of manipulation and emotional highs and lows may leave you unsure of what is real. When you begin to rebuild yourself emotionally, learning to trust your inner voice and instinct is key to moving forward. Start small by recognizing the moments when you feel uneasy, uncomfortable, or disrespected, and listen to that inner warning system. Trusting yourself means acknowledging your feelings and giving yourself permission to act on them, without fear or guilt. Self-reflection plays a huge role in overcoming toxic love. This involves looking back at the relationship objectively, understanding the dynamics that kept you trapped, and acknowledging the emotional toll it took. It's easy to get caught up in the desire to change the other person or in the hope that they will eventually become who you want them to be. However, true emotional freedom comes from accepting that you cannot change someone else. Only they have the power to make those changes. This realization helps you release the illusion of control over the relationship and focus on what you can change: your own emotional healing and growth. Reflection helps you understand the red flags you ignored and the patterns you fell into, so you can avoid repeating them in the future. Forgiveness is another crucial aspect of freeing yourself from toxic love. However, this doesn't mean excusing the toxic behavior or pretending that it didn't hurt. Forgiveness is for you, not the other person. Holding on to anger, resentment, or the desire for revenge only keeps you emotionally shackled to the past. Forgiveness allows you to let go of the toxic hold the relationship has on you. It's about releasing the grip that anger and pain have on your heart, so you can heal and move on. The act of forgiving, not for the sake of the other person but for your own peace, is a powerful step toward emotional freedom. In the journey toward emotional freedom, it's essential to also build emotional resilience. Toxic relationships often leave you vulnerable to re-entering similar unhealthy dynamics, especially when the craving for validation or affection is still strong. Building resilience means strengthening your emotional health so you can face future challenges with confidence and self-awareness. This can be achieved through therapy, support groups, or engaging in healthy coping mechanisms like mindfulness, journaling, and exercise. By learning how to manage your emotions independently and positively, you make yourself less susceptible to being manipulated or drawn into toxic relationships again. Creating a new support system is another important aspect of emotional recovery. After being in a toxic relationship, it's common to feel isolated or disconnected. Often, toxic partners isolate you from friends and family, making it harder to reach out for support. Now is the time to rebuild your network of relationships with people who are positive, supportive, and nurturing. This might mean reaching out to old friends, joining social groups, or connecting with people who share your interests. Having a support system that encourages your growth and well-being is essential for healing and provides a reminder that you are worthy of healthy, loving relationships. Lastly, set new relationship standards. Once you have freed yourself from the toxicity of the past, it's time to set clear and healthy boundaries for future relationships. Establishing these standards isn't about being overly rigid or rejecting love entirely. It's about ensuring that you won't accept anything less than respect, support, and equality. Healthy relationships are grounded in mutual respect and understanding, where both partners contribute to each other's emotional well-being without control, manipulation, or neglect. Setting these standards means knowing what you deserve and not settling for anything less. Overcoming toxic love is a process of rediscovering yourself, your worth, your independence, and your capacity to love in a healthy, balanced way. It takes time, patience, and the willingness to let go of the past, but it is a journey worth taking. Emotional freedom is about reclaiming control over your life, your emotions, and your happiness. And once you do, you'll find that you are capable of experiencing a love that is real, nurturing, and most importantly, free from toxicity. Breaking free. How to escape toxic love. Breaking free from a toxic relationship is often much harder than it seems. The very nature of toxic love traps you in a cycle of emotional dependency, making it feel almost impossible to escape. But the first step in freeing yourself from the grip of a toxic partner is recognizing that you deserve better. It's about understanding that the chaos, the manipulation, and the constant emotional turmoil are not reflections of love, but of control, insecurity, and manipulation. Once this reality sets in, the process of breaking free becomes a journey of rediscovering your own worth and reclaiming your emotional independence. The emotional weight of leaving a toxic relationship is immense. Even if you know, deep down, that the relationship is unhealthy, there is a part of you that is still attached. You might find yourself longing for the good times, the moments of affection that felt so real. These moments are what keep you emotionally tethered to your partner, making it difficult to envision life without them. The first challenge, then, is breaking the illusion that these moments of tenderness or passion are the full extent of love. True love doesn't come with strings attached, nor does it come with emotional manipulation. To begin the process of breaking free, the first thing you need to do is detach emotionally from the toxic partner. This might involve cutting off all forms of communication, blocking them from social media, and avoiding any form of interaction that could pull you back into the cycle. The idea of no contact may seem extreme, but it's necessary to create the emotional distance that allows you to think clearly and regain control over your own emotions. The longer you stay in contact, the more likely you are to fall back into the toxic dynamics that once defined your relationship. Next, it's essential to acknowledge and process the emotional trauma that has accumulated over the course of the relationship. Toxic relationships often leave scars that aren't visible on the surface. The constant emotional upheaval, manipulation, and gaslighting can take a toll on your self-esteem, leaving you feeling insecure, unworthy, and unsure of your own identity. These feelings are not easy to face, but they are crucial to healing. Journaling, talking to a therapist, or simply reflecting on the emotional impact of the relationship can be powerful ways to process the pain and start to rebuild your sense of self. Rebuilding self-esteem is another essential aspect of breaking free from a toxic relationship. When you've been emotionally manipulated and gaslit, you may begin to believe that you are worthless or incapable of being loved in a healthy way. This perception is false, but it takes time and effort to unlearn these beliefs. You need to remind yourself of your worth, acknowledge your strengths, and rebuild your confidence. Surrounding yourself with supportive friends and family, engaging in activities that promote personal growth, and setting small, achievable goals can help to restore your sense of self-worth. Additionally, setting boundaries is crucial, not only with your toxic partner, but with everyone in your life. Boundaries are an essential part of self-respect and self-care. They are the guidelines you set to protect your emotional and mental health. In toxic relationships, boundaries are often blurred, with the toxic partner overstepping and manipulating your emotional space. Relearning how to set clear, healthy boundaries can be a powerful tool in the recovery process. Start by identifying what you are willing to tolerate and what you are not, and communicate these boundaries clearly to others. Another important aspect of breaking free is accepting that healing takes time. The process of recovering from a toxic relationship is not linear. There will be setbacks, moments of weakness, and days when the emotional pain feels unbearable. But with each day that passes, you grow stronger. Healing comes in waves. It may take time to fully detach from the emotional pull of the relationship, but as you continue to focus on your well-being, the grip of toxicity loosens. It's also important to understand that guilt and shame are common emotions when trying to break free from a toxic relationship. You may feel guilty for leaving your partner, even though you know the relationship is damaging. This guilt can stem from a deep-rooted belief that you are responsible for their happiness or well-being. Let go of the idea that you are the one who needs to fix them. You are not responsible for their actions, nor should you sacrifice your happiness for their sake. You deserve a life filled with peace, stability, and love, and that starts by letting go of the relationship that is holding you back. The final part of breaking free is embracing your new reality. Once you have broken free from the toxic relationship, you must learn to live independently, emotionally, and practically. This may mean exploring new interests, forging new friendships, and redefining what love means to you. It's about becoming comfortable with yourself again and creating a life where you are the priority. This doesn't mean shutting yourself off from love entirely, but it does mean learning how to embrace a healthier, more balanced approach to relationships. Breaking free from toxic love is not easy, but it is possible. The pain may seem overwhelming, and the future may feel uncertain, but with time, support, and determination, you can move past the toxicity and create a life filled with self-love, stability, and healthy relationships. The journey is long, but it is also transformative. The strength you gain through this process will make you more resilient, more self-aware, and more prepared for the healthy love that awaits you in the future. Rebuilding self-love after toxic relationships. When we've been through a toxic relationship, especially one that has eroded our sense of self-worth, rebuilding self-love becomes the most important step toward healing. Self-love is not just a buzzword. It's the foundation upon which we build our sense of identity, our emotional well-being, and our capacity to form healthy relationships in the future. After a toxic relationship, many of us find that we've lost touch with who we really are, what we value, and what we deserve. We've spent so long giving to someone else, often at the expense of our own needs, that we forget how to nurture and care for ourselves. The first thing to understand when rebuilding self-love is that it's a process, not an instant fix. It takes time, patience, and a willingness to reflect deeply on who you are. Often, we fall into toxic relationships because we've neglected our own needs or allowed our self-worth to be defined by others. Toxic partners, with their emotional manipulation and inconsistency, may have convinced us that we're not enough, that we need to change, or that we're unworthy of love. This messaging doesn't disappear overnight. It takes intentional work to undo the damage that's been done to our sense of self. A significant part of rebuilding self-love is healing the emotional wounds left by the toxic relationship. This may involve confronting painful memories, acknowledging the damage that was done, and allowing ourselves to grieve the loss of who we were before the relationship. It's important to give ourselves permission to feel the hurt, rather than suppressing it or pretending it doesn't exist. Healing isn't linear. Some days will feel easier than others. But with each wave of pain comes an opportunity for growth. The process of healing requires us to tune into our feelings and recognize that it's okay to experience sadness, anger, or confusion. These emotions are valid, and they serve as reminders that we've been through something challenging. In rebuilding self-love, self-compassion is key. It's easy to fall into the trap of self-criticism, especially when we've been made to feel like we're not good enough by a toxic partner. However, self-compassion allows us to break free from this cycle of self-doubt. It's about being gentle with ourselves, acknowledging our mistakes without beating ourselves up, and understanding that our worth isn't defined by past mistakes or toxic relationships. Practicing self-compassion involves changing the way we talk to ourselves. Instead of saying, "I'm not good enough," or "I deserve this pain," we must replace those thoughts with affirmations like, "I am worthy of love and respect," and "I deserve peace and happiness." Over time, these affirmations will start to reshape the way we view ourselves. A crucial element of rebuilding self-love is learning to set healthy boundaries. In a toxic relationship, we often lose sight of our own needs, making sacrifices in order to please our partner or avoid conflict. Setting boundaries after leaving a toxic relationship is about reclaiming our sense of self and protecting our emotional space. Healthy boundaries are an essential part of self-respect. They allow us to say no when we need to stand up for ourselves, and to honor our own emotional needs without guilt. For many, setting boundaries can feel difficult or uncomfortable at first, especially if they've been conditioned to ignore their own needs in favor of someone else's. But setting boundaries is an act of self-love. It's an affirmation that we are important and that our needs are just as valid as anyone else's. Another critical step in rebuilding self-love is rediscovering passions and interests that were sidelined during the toxic relationship. In toxic dynamics, we often lose ourselves by focusing too much on the needs and desires of our partner. Once we've left the relationship, it's important to reconnect with what makes us happy, whether that's a hobby, a career goal, or a passion project. Reclaiming our identity outside of the toxic relationship is vital for healing. It's about reminding ourselves of who we are beyond the relationship, of what we love, and of what excites us. Rediscovering those parts of ourselves helps to rebuild the self-confidence that was eroded over time. Self-care practices also play a crucial role in rebuilding self-love. Taking care of our body and mind helps us restore the emotional balance that was disturbed in the toxic relationship. This can be as simple as getting enough sleep, eating nourishing foods, exercising, or engaging in mindfulness practices such as meditation or yoga. These practices remind us that we deserve to feel good, both physically and emotionally. They help us connect with our bodies in a way that fosters respect and gratitude. Additionally, engaging in self-care strengthens our emotional resilience and boosts our mental well-being, helping us better cope with the challenges of healing. Rebuilding self-love also involves creating a supportive environment. After a toxic relationship, we may feel isolated or disconnected from others. It's important to surround ourselves with people who uplift us, who respect our boundaries, and who show us the kind of love we deserve. This might mean seeking out new friends, reconnecting with family members, or joining communities where we feel accepted and valued. Sometimes, support can also come in the form of therapy, where a professional can guide us through the process of self-healing and provide tools to rebuild our emotional strength. Finally, we must remember that healing and self-love are ongoing journeys. There is no end point where everything is perfect, but every small step forward is a victory. The process is about progress, not perfection. Every time we choose to honor ourselves, practice self-compassion, and set healthy boundaries, we are reinforcing the love we have for ourselves. Over time, this foundation of self-love will not only help us heal from the past, but also empower us to build healthier, more fulfilling relationships in the future. Boundaries and self-awareness in healthy relationships. Boundaries are often one of the most misunderstood aspects of relationships. In a healthy relationship, boundaries are essential for maintaining emotional and psychological well-being. Boundaries are not just about saying no to unwanted behavior. They are about understanding and respecting your own limits and the limits of others. They are a reflection of self-awareness and self-respect, as they define what is acceptable and what isn't in any relationship. Without clear boundaries, it's easy to fall into toxic dynamics where one person's needs dominate, leaving the other partner feeling invisible or neglected. The first step in understanding boundaries is recognizing that they are a personal and individual matter. Each person has different needs, comforts, and levels of emotional and physical intimacy. What one person considers a healthy boundary may not be the same for someone else. This is why self-awareness is key in developing healthy boundaries. To understand what is acceptable to you, you need to be in touch with your own feelings, needs, and limits. This requires honest self-reflection and a willingness to prioritize your own well-being. One of the most important aspects of boundaries is recognizing emotional boundaries. In a healthy relationship, both partners should be able to express their feelings without fear of judgment or dismissal. Emotional boundaries allow individuals to share their emotions, needs, and desires in a way that feels safe and respectful. If you feel that your emotions are constantly dismissed or belittled, or that your partner refuses to respect your emotional space, it's a clear indicator that boundaries are not being honored. Establishing emotional boundaries is about recognizing when you feel uncomfortable, overwhelmed, or disrespected and learning to communicate those feelings openly and assertively. Another key aspect of boundaries in a healthy relationship is physical boundaries. Physical boundaries are just as important as emotional ones, and they involve understanding and respecting each other's personal space, touch, and physical limits. These boundaries can range from how much personal space you need to how comfortable you feel with physical affection. Respecting physical boundaries means that both partners honor each other's comfort levels and communicate openly about their physical needs and desires. In a healthy relationship, both partners should feel safe to express their preferences and should not feel pressure to engage in physical intimacy until they are ready. Setting and respecting boundaries also requires clear communication. Often, people enter relationships without discussing their boundaries, assuming that their partner will intuitively understand their needs. However, this is rarely the case. Open, honest communication is necessary to establish what each person needs and expects from the relationship. This means not only stating your boundaries clearly, but also listening actively to your partner's needs. In some cases, boundaries might need to be renegotiated over time, especially as the relationship deepens or changes. The goal is to foster an environment where both partners feel safe to express their needs and are committed to respecting each other's boundaries. One of the most difficult aspects of setting boundaries is dealing with guilt or fear of rejection. Many people fear that asserting their boundaries will lead to conflict or even the end of the relationship. They may feel guilty for wanting space, time alone, or the ability to say no. However, true intimacy in a healthy relationship can only thrive when both partners feel secure enough to express their needs without fear of rejection or retaliation. If a partner reacts negatively to your boundaries, be it through manipulation, guilt-tripping, or anger, it's a sign of emotional abuse, not love. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, where both individuals feel empowered to assert their boundaries without fear of retaliation. Self-awareness also plays a critical role in respecting your own boundaries. Often, we fail to set boundaries because we don't fully recognize or value our own needs. When we ignore our own limits, we risk losing ourselves in the relationship. Self-awareness allows us to tune into our own emotions and recognize when we feel overwhelmed, taken advantage of, or unappreciated. It is essential to regularly check in with ourselves, ask how we feel, and assess whether our boundaries are being respected. The more in tune we are with ourselves, the better we can communicate our needs and protect our emotional well-being. In a healthy relationship, boundaries are not about building walls between partners. They are about creating space where both individuals can be their authentic selves. Boundaries allow each partner to maintain their sense of self and pursue their own passions, while also fostering a sense of closeness and intimacy in the relationship. When both partners respect each other's boundaries, it leads to a relationship built on trust, respect, and mutual care. One of the challenges of establishing boundaries is the fear of losing the relationship. In toxic relationships, this fear is often amplified. The idea that setting boundaries will push someone away or cause them to withdraw can feel overwhelming. However, the reality is that setting healthy boundaries strengthens the relationship by establishing mutual respect and trust. When both partners feel heard and respected, the relationship has the foundation it needs to grow in a healthy direction. Boundaries are an essential part of creating a relationship where both partners can thrive as individuals while also coming together in partnership. Ultimately, respecting boundaries is about honoring each other's emotional and physical needs. It requires constant communication, self-awareness, and mutual respect. When both partners practice boundary setting, they create a relationship that is supportive, fulfilling, and healthy. In the absence of boundaries, relationships can quickly devolve into unhealthy patterns where one partner dominates and the other feels disrespected or neglected. By valuing and respecting boundaries, both partners can create a safe and nurturing space for love to flourish. Moving forward, attracting healthier relationships. Moving forward from a toxic relationship requires a shift in perspective, a mindset that embraces personal growth, emotional healing, and the belief that healthier relationships are possible. After breaking free from toxicity, the challenge becomes learning how to attract and cultivate relationships that are supportive, fulfilling, and, most importantly, healthy. The first step in this journey is understanding that you are worthy of love that nurtures and supports you, and that love should never come with manipulation, pain, or uncertainty. One of the key aspects of attracting healthier relationships is healing from the past. It's essential to ensure that the emotional wounds from the toxic relationship are properly addressed before entering a new dynamic. If we carry unresolved pain, fear, or self-doubt into a new relationship, we risk repeating unhealthy patterns. Healing from the past involves not only processing the emotional damage caused by the toxic relationship, but also learning to embrace self-love and emotional resilience. Only when we are emotionally whole can we attract a partner who is ready to build a healthy, mutually fulfilling relationship with us. Setting clear relationship standards is a crucial part of moving forward. When you've been in a toxic relationship, it's easy to overlook red flags or accept behaviors that you shouldn't tolerate. This is why it's vital to establish clear boundaries and expectations for any future relationships. These standards are a reflection of the respect and love you expect from others. When you are clear about what you deserve, you'll be better equipped to recognize potential partners who align with those values. You'll also have a deeper sense of self-worth and won't settle for anything less than a relationship based on mutual respect, trust, and shared goals. A healthy relationship is based on mutual respect and trust, the cornerstones of any long-lasting bond. Moving forward requires learning how to cultivate these qualities in your relationships. Mutual respect means that both partners honor each other's boundaries, opinions, and personal space. It's important to recognize that each partner has their own life, interests, and individuality, and these should be valued within the relationship. Trust, on the other hand, is something that is built gradually through consistent honesty, communication, and reliability. In a healthy relationship, trust is not something that is demanded, but something that is earned over time. It's also important to nurture emotional independence. Healthy relationships are built on two individuals who are confident, secure, and fulfilled in their own lives. Emotional dependence, where one partner relies on the other for validation, approval, or emotional stability, can quickly lead to unhealthy dynamics. To attract a healthier relationship, focus on building your own emotional resilience. Engage in activities that bring you joy, pursue your passions, and create a life that you are happy with, regardless of your relationship status. When you are content and confident on your own, you are more likely to attract someone who respects and admires you for who you truly are. As you move forward, it's crucial to embrace vulnerability, a trait that is often lacking in toxic relationships. In a healthy relationship, both partners should feel safe to open up, share their fears, dreams, and insecurities. Vulnerability allows both individuals to connect on a deeper level and build intimacy. However, vulnerability should never come at the expense of self-respect. It's important to feel emotionally safe and understood by your partner, and to be with someone who is willing to listen and support you in times of need. In addition, healthy relationships are built on effective communication. Learning how to communicate openly, honestly, and respectfully is essential for any relationship to thrive. In toxic relationships, communication often breaks down into passive-aggressive behavior, silent treatment, or emotional manipulation. Moving forward means practicing open dialogue where both partners express their feelings, needs, and desires without fear of judgment or retaliation. Healthy communication fosters trust and understanding, allowing conflicts to be resolved in a constructive manner. As you embrace these new practices and values, patience is key. It takes time to learn how to navigate relationships with healthy dynamics, especially after experiencing a toxic one. You may encounter challenges or setbacks as you move forward, but each experience will teach you something valuable. Remember that the goal is not to rush into another relationship, but to allow time for emotional healing, self-discovery, and personal growth. Take the time to reflect on what you truly want in a partner and a relationship, and give yourself the space to find someone who genuinely aligns with your values and life goals. Finally, self-awareness plays a central role in attracting a healthier relationship. By understanding your own needs, boundaries, and emotional triggers, you can ensure that you are ready for a relationship that adds value to your life, rather than detracting from it. Reflect on your past experiences, both positive and negative, and identify patterns that you want to avoid. By embracing personal growth and learning from past mistakes, you will be better equipped to recognize the right kind of relationship when it presents itself. Attracting a healthier relationship is not about perfection. It's about growth, mutual respect, and emotional compatibility. When you are in a place of emotional strength, self-awareness, and self-love, you will naturally attract a partner who values those same qualities. Moving forward from a toxic relationship means reclaiming your worth, setting healthy standards, and being open to love that is nurturing, fulfilling, and empowering. The power of healthy love and boundaries. In every relationship, the foundation must be built on trust, respect, and mutual understanding. Healthy love is not about perfection, nor is it about idealized fantasies we see in movies or on social media. Healthy love is grounded in reality, in clear boundaries, and in the ability to give and receive respect without fear of manipulation or control. True love does not feel like a burden, but rather a source of joy, safety, and empowerment. The power of healthy love lies in its ability to foster growth, create emotional safety, and support both partners as they navigate life together. For any relationship to thrive, it is essential to have clear boundaries. Boundaries are not about building walls or shutting out others. Rather, they are the guidelines that help maintain emotional, physical, and mental well-being. Healthy boundaries ensure that both individuals have the space to grow, to be themselves, and to feel respected and heard. Boundaries prevent toxic behaviors like manipulation, control, and emotional neglect from taking root, and they protect both individuals from feeling overwhelmed or unappreciated. Establishing and respecting boundaries is a form of self-love, and it is fundamental to the long-term health of any relationship. Equally important is the ability to communicate effectively. Healthy communication is about more than just words. It's about listening with an open heart, being honest without fear of judgment, and being willing to understand each other's needs. In a toxic relationship, communication is often laced with defensiveness, manipulation, or silence. But in a healthy relationship, communication is constructive, respectful, and compassionate. It is the key to resolving conflicts, understanding one another's emotions, and maintaining the emotional connection that is vital for intimacy. Healthy love is also about embracing the imperfections that come with being human. No one is perfect, and no relationship is without challenges. The beauty of healthy love lies in the ability to work through these challenges together, to support each other, and to grow as individuals and as partners. When both people in the relationship feel safe to be vulnerable, to make mistakes, and to learn from them, the bond deepens. Healthy love is a partnership where both individuals are encouraged to become the best version of themselves, and where mutual growth is celebrated. One of the most powerful elements of healthy love is its ability to heal. In a toxic relationship, emotional wounds accumulate, and trust is eroded. But healthy love has the power to restore, renew, and rebuild. It is through healthy relationships that we learn to trust again, to let go of past pain, and to open our hearts to genuine connection. Love in its purest form creates a space where both individuals feel supported, valued, and cherished, allowing them to heal from past wounds and build a future together. Furthermore, healthy love involves recognizing the importance of self-love. The foundation of any successful relationship begins with how we love and respect ourselves. When we know our worth, we are less likely to settle for anything less than we deserve. Self-love means setting boundaries, taking care of our emotional health, and nurturing our sense of self. It's through self-love that we are able to give love freely and healthfully to others, without losing ourselves in the process. When we love ourselves, we set the tone for how others should treat us, and we create space for relationships that uplift, rather than deplete, our energy. Another cornerstone of healthy love is mutual respect. Respecting each other's individuality, beliefs, and boundaries is essential. In a healthy relationship, both partners honor one another's differences and work together to build a partnership based on equality, trust, and shared values. Mutual respect fosters an environment where both individuals feel valued, where their opinions and feelings are considered, and where they feel heard. When respect is present, the relationship becomes a place of safety, not one where one partner dominates or diminishes the other. In contrast, toxic relationships thrive on power imbalances, where one person seeks to control or dominate the other. But healthy love thrives on equality, where both partners contribute equally to the emotional, physical, and mental well-being of the relationship. Healthy love is not about competition or control. It's about collaboration, partnership, and support. It's about being there for each other during both the good times and the difficult moments. And it's about finding joy in the companionship and shared experiences that come from mutual respect and love. Ultimately, the power of healthy love lies in its ability to transform both individuals and their connection. Healthy love nurtures the best qualities in both people, encouraging them to grow, heal, and evolve together. It creates an environment where both partners can be their authentic selves, where they are valued for who they truly are, and where their emotional, mental, and physical well-being is prioritized. Healthy love isn't about finding someone to complete you. It's about finding someone with whom you can grow, learn, and build a fulfilling, supportive partnership. As you move forward from toxic love and embrace healthier relationships, it's important to remember that you deserve to be loved in a way that respects your boundaries, values, and emotional needs. True love should feel safe, nurturing, and empowering. It should uplift you, inspire you, and allow you to flourish as an individual. By setting boundaries, communicating effectively, and cultivating mutual respect, you open the door to the kind of love that nurtures your soul and brings joy to your life.